The deep sea, a place full of mystery and fear. Since ancient times, legends of various strange creatures from the deep sea have always attracted countless eyes. They make people hesitate to approach the ocean, yet remain deeply fascinated by it. Here, there is a beautiful world full of imagination, with underwater cities full of corals and vibrant bioluminescent dancers. But at the same time, it is filled with killing intent and infinite conflict. However, there is an even more terrifying fact. The further you venture into the deep sea, the more likely you are to encounter creatures of much larger sizes. For example, the Japanese spider crab, the big red jellyfish, the giant oarfish, the ruby squid, the Greenland shark, giant isopods, and so on. Although the places they live are pitch black, and the temperature is extremely low, these fellows can still adapt perfectly. In the darkness, they are not only like ghosts, but they also evolve to be very strange and super giant. Take this fellow, for example. Its body size has far exceeded its counterparts living on land. And this squid, no relative that can rival it, can be found in the shallow zones. Why, in such a terrible environment, do they become larger than those in the shallow zones? Judging by the current situation of food scarcity beneath the deep sea, this does not follow normal logic. Is this a coincidence in the darkness of the deep sea? Or is there some secret hidden within them? In this episode, we will explore the truths buried beneath the deep sea. The ocean is one of the most important components of the Earth. It covers approximately 78% of the area. 97% of the water on Earth is in the ocean. The entire ocean is divided into several different zones, based on different depths. Among them, the deep sea region is the largest single ecosystem on Earth. Its coverage area exceeds 300 million square kilometers. So, what can be called the deep sea? First, the very first zone in the ocean is called the epipelagic zone. Since sunlight can penetrate it, it is also known as the sunlight zone. It is located above 200 meters in the ocean. Because sunlight is abundant here, many marine creatures choose to live in this area. It is one of the places on Earth with the richest marine species, most brilliant colors, and most vitality. If we dive deeper, we come to the mesopelagic zone. It is also known as the twilight zone. This region begins at the depth where only 1% of incident light reaches and ends where there is no light. In terms of depth, this region is located 200 to 1,000 meters below sea level. Due to the extremely faint light in the twilight zone, photosynthesis is almost impossible here. The deep sea, theoretically, refers to places below a depth of 200 meters. If we go further down from the twilight zone to 1,000 to 4,000 meters, this is the true no-light region, called the bathypelagic zone. At this depth, the only light that can be seen is bioluminescence. For example, the faint light emitted from the skin of certain squids, or the lure light used by anglerfish to create traps. The temperature in the bathypelagic zone is alarmingly low. The entire region is only about 4 degrees Celsius. In addition, the pressure is very high. Since atmospheric pressure increases by 1 for every 10 meters of depth, the hydrostatic pressure in this area ranges from 100 to 400 atmospheres. It is believed that these conditions have remained unchanged for the past 8,000 years. Below the bathypelagic zone is the abyssopelagic zone, ranging from 4,000 to 6,000 meters. This region is also in permanent darkness. The temperature is 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. Here, the pressure is already 600 times the atmospheric pressure on land, which is terrifying. The final zone of the ocean is the hadopelagic zone, from 6,000 to 11,000 meters. That is the true ultimate deep sea. These places are usually located in ocean trenches formed by long, narrow terrain, such as the deepest trench in the world, the Mariana Trench. Currently, only a few countries' deep-sea submersibles have the capability to reach here, and the total number of times they have entered these zones is also very few. Although the conditions in the abyssal zones are extremely harsh, life still exists there, which is simply incredible. Usually in the ocean, below 400 meters, food already becomes quite scarce because as sunlight gradually fades, algae and plankton that can perform photosynthesis disappear. Without this key part of the food chain, the life of deep-sea animals becomes much more difficult. Most of them have to rely on debris falling from the shallow zones. This debris is also known as marine snow. It mainly consists of dead plankton, fecal pellets, and decaying body fragments falling to the seabed in particulate form. Some animals have evolved special skills to directly utilize marine snow. For example, the vampire squid has acquired a special ability through long-term evolution. This fellow has two long, thin filaments on its body. It can use these filaments to collect marine snow and use it as a source of nutrients. Marine snow is the pillar of all life in the deep sea, but it cannot provide enough support for large animals. In other words, it is almost impossible for those extra-large animals to maintain their lives through marine snow. In the deep sea, the number of organisms is inherently scarce, and the food web becomes exceptionally tight. Those fellows that do not eat marine snow directly can only rely on animals that feed on marine snow. Therefore, the pressure of predation and competition is very high. Whether it is small fish, crustaceans, or the vast majority of cephalopods, there will be larger predators above them, lurking in the dark, coveting their bodies. For this reason, animals are working hard to escape the targets above them and find ways to transform from prey into top predators. The giant squid is a representative of deep-sea top predators. It is not only the most mysterious existence, but also a symbol of the deep sea. People's initial impression of giant squids came from their carcasses washed ashore. Because until the 21st century, no one in the world had ever personally witnessed what they looked like living deep under the sea. In 2004, humans first photographed a living giant squid in its natural habitat in the twilight zone at about 1,000 meters deep. Although we don't know much about them, there is no doubt that almost everyone is shocked by their massive body size. To date, the largest individual discovered is 13 meters long, which is comparable to a large bus. In terms of weight, it reaches 275 kilograms. By comparison, their squid relatives living in shallow waters are only about 60 centimeters long. When the two are compared, the gap is simply indescribable. People believe squids have giant bodies, so they have very few predators, and these fellows can easily eat fish in the deep sea or other types of squid. Although the giant squid's body size is very large, it is not the largest among deep-sea squids. Because above it, there is a big brother, namely the colossal squid. The colossal squid is the undisputed largest invertebrate in the world by size. Although its length is only 10 meters, slightly shorter than the giant squid, its weight reaches a staggering 500 to 700 kilograms. It is nearly 3 times the size of a giant squid. However, sightings of the Antarctic squid are even more incredibly rare. Many believe that such a behemoth is undoubtedly an apex predator with extreme aggression, requiring constant food intake to maintain its massive body's functions. In ancient maritime history, there was no shortage of legends about these monsters, tales of them capsizing ships, tearing apart, and devouring sailors. Is that really the truth? However, in reality, these rare creatures might just shatter your perceptions, because within them lies another key to unlocking the mystery of deep-sea giants. They have taken Kleiber's law to its absolute limit. The law states that an animal's metabolic level is not linearly positively correlated with its body weight. For many animals, the basal metabolic rate is proportional to the 3/4 power of body weight. This is Kleiber's law. Initially, Kleiber only studied mammals. Later, other scientists expanded the research and found that this law applies to everything from bacteria to whales, covering all kinds of organisms without exception. How should we understand this law? For example, although a cat's weight is 100 times that of a mouse, the calories a cat consumes to sustain life are not 100 times those of a mouse. According to the formula of the law, a cat's metabolic rate should be 31 times larger than a mouse's. In other words, while the metabolic rate increases as body weight increases, in terms of overall value, the ratio of this increase actually decreases. To put it simply, the larger the animal, the higher its energy utilization efficiency. To this day, scientists have been unable to fully understand why all life on Earth follows this eerie 3/4 power rule. But regarding the giant squid, the answer to their massive size seems to have been found, because these fellows have pushed Kleiber's law to the extreme, even surpassing the limits. In terms of the larger the animal, the higher the efficiency, they are the best at it. Furthermore, scientific research has found that the energy needs of giant squids are 300 to 600 times lower than those of apex predators of similar size in the same waters. It's quite staggering. A giant squid burns only 45 calories a day, and to fulfill these heat requirements, they only need to consume 0.03 kilograms of food. For example, if a 500-kilogram squid eats a small 5 kilograms fish in the deep sea, that fish can meet its energy needs for 200 days. Why is their energy consumption so much lower? Actually, this is mainly related to their pace of life. Compared to large animals at the surface, giant squids in the pitch-black environment live at a much slower pace. They often remain still in the darkness, slowly waiting for prey to approach, and then use their tentacles to hook the prey into their mouths. So their real appearance in the ocean is not like what the legends say, agile, actively attacking, and invincible. On the contrary, they are more like sit-and-wait hunters in the deep sea. Since it is pitch black deep in the ocean, it's almost impossible to rely on vision for hunting. But the giant squid has evolved a pair of incredibly massive eyes. Their eyes reach a staggering width of 30 centimeters, making them the largest eyes of any animal on Earth. Since they aren't useful for hunting, what is the purpose of evolving such large eyes? As it turns out, they are specifically designed for detecting and avoiding natural predators. Despite being big brothers of the deep, there aren't many creatures that can prey on them. Currently, the only known natural enemy seems to be the sperm whale. There's no helping it. After all, sperm whales are mammals. Moreover, these creatures possess extraordinary natural abilities, excelling at deep diving, and most importantly, they have a specific appetite for giant squids. The giant squid likely thinks that if it lowers its metabolism a bit more and evolves an even larger body, it might have a chance to contend with the sperm whale. While Kleiber's law explains to some extent why deep-sea squids are so massive, it cannot explain why animals living at the bottom of the sea, fixed to the seabed, also become so giant, because they lack digestive systems, and these fellows consume extremely low energy during movement. The deep-sea sponge is a vivid example of this type of animal. They can grow to 3.5 meters long and over 2 meters high, continuing above 3.5 meters long and over 2 meters high. In 2015, in the waters near Hawaii at a depth of 2,134 meters, people discovered an incredibly massive sponge. It was like a small van in size, and is considered the largest known sponge in the world. Deep water sponges, like many other deep-sea animals, primarily rely on marine snow to sustain life. As for why they are so massive, scientists believe that besides metabolic needs and pressure from predators, there is another reason forcing animals to grow larger: the deep and freezing cold seawater. In the mid-19th century, German biologist Carl Bergman proposed a rule regarding animal body size, known as Bergman's rule. The rule states that animals found in cold environments tend to be larger in body size than those in warm environments. However, historical experience suggests that this rule seems to apply only to endothermic, warm-blooded animals, such as birds and mammals. As to whether it applies to ectothermic, cold-blooded animals, such as squids, giant crabs, and giant isopods in the deep sea, This has been a subject of great debate in the scientific community. But in reality, it seems quite evident that cold-blooded animals living in freezing regions are indeed larger in body size than those in warm areas. For over a century, explorers and zoologists heading to the poles have recorded various magical animals they encountered there. They discovered long ago that worms and even single-celled organisms in polar oceans are much larger in body size than those in other regions. The most eye-catching thing is this giant sea spider discovered on the Antarctic seabed. It is the largest sea spider species on Earth, with a leg span reaching a staggering 60 centimeters. Holding it in your hands is like holding a giant dinner plate. Yet in other ocean regions, their relatives of the same kind are less than 1 millimeter in length, appearing so tiny. The theory is that underwater in cold regions, the oxygen content is richer, which is conducive to animals growing larger. Facts also show that deep-sea gigantism occurs in the Arctic and Southern Oceans, and is indeed more common there. In these places, even animals living in shallow waters are much larger in size compared to those in warm water zones. However, the deeper the depth, the more obvious the phenomenon of gigantism becomes. In the depths of the polar oceans, there is one most representative colossus. It is the Greenland shark. The Greenland shark is the largest fish in the Arctic Ocean and one of the largest sharks in the world. It can reach 7 meters in length and weigh up to 1,400 kilograms. They live at depths below 2,000 meters, where the water temperature is only -2 to 7 degrees Celsius. It is the only shark that can withstand the cold Arctic waters year-round. This extreme cold environment not only makes the Greenland shark massive, but also allows it to live much longer. According to data, the Greenland shark is currently the longest living vertebrate known to exist. Scientists estimate their average lifespan to be 272 years, with some individuals even living over 500 years. Because sharks have proteins in their eyes formed before birth, they are covered by the crystalline lens, and these proteins do not degrade with age. Therefore, scientists can estimate their age through radiocarbon dating. Besides having a long lifespan, their reproduction is also extremely slow. On average, they don't reach reproductive age until they are 150 years old. Similar to the giant squid, the Greenland shark has two major characteristics. One is slow movement and a slow metabolism. The second is that they are all opportunists. They are used to waiting for prey and will also eat leftovers and scraps in the ocean. Additionally, a type of copepod often parasitizes this shark's eyes. It reduces the shark's vision or even causes blindness. This has forced the shark to evolve a sharper sense of smell. However, because this copepod is bioluminescent, it also helps the Greenland shark lure its prey to some extent. The gigantism animals mentioned earlier generally live in waters from 200 to 4,000 meters. So, what is the situation like at depths of 6,000 or even 10,000 meters? In the deepest ocean trenches, temperatures are usually only 1 to 4 degrees Celsius. It is completely dark here, and the water pressure is 1,100 times that of the ocean surface. In the Ocean Gate incident that recently shocked the world, the crushed submersible was only at a depth of less than 4,000 meters. One can only imagine how terrifying the power of water pressure is at 10,000 meters below. Here, the marine snow that provides material support for deep-sea creatures is almost gone, as it has already been consumed in shallower areas. Reasonably speaking, such an extreme environment shouldn't support larger life forms. But strangely, many supersized amphipods are extremely active here. Alicella gigana, found in the Atlantic, is the largest known amphipod in the world. It reaches a length of 34 centimeters, while amphipods living in shallow waters are generally only 1 centimeter. In other words, these guys in the abyss are dozens of times larger than their relatives. It's like something the size of an ant, growing as big as a mouse here. It's quite exaggerated. It is speculated that The size of these amphipods is related to oxygen availability, because on the coccyx of these animals, gills and tubular abdominal fluids were found. These extra structures enable them to absorb more oxygen. This is considered one of the reasons for their gigantism. Of course, the icy seawater is also a factor. Another deep-sea monster, similar in size to Alicella, is this famous fellow, the giant isopod. It is a giant type of isopod. The giant isopods in the abyss are also an extreme example of gigantism. In the deep sea, they can grow up to 50 centimeters long, but their relatives living in land gardens are only 6 millimeters. The gap between the two is very striking. These guys like to search for waste like carrion scraps on the seabed, and they won't pass up anything they encounter that they can decompose and digest. Normally, this fellow is not an active type, but once they catch the scent of carrion, they will travel long distances at all costs. Once they find food, they will immediately eat voraciously, eating as much as they can until they can't even move. At this point, their huge body size comes in handy. It allows them to store more food and energy. Storing more energy isn't that special. What's most surprising is that this fellow can go without food for a long time after just one meal. A scientific study found that giant isopods in captive environments can survive for more than 5 years without food. With this kind of endurance, it's no wonder they don't starve to death in the abyss. To survive in such resource-depleted places, marine animals have used every trick in the book. Scientists recently discovered that a deep-sea animal secretes a special enzyme, and this enzyme can actually decompose plant matter. Experimenters tested it with wood pulp and sawdust and found that the special enzyme can break down wood into glucose, which is quite impressive. Furthermore, the enzymes secreted by these creatures are very special. Their efficiency increases as the ocean depth increases. In other words, the deeper they dive, the faster the decomposition rate. But this is strange. On the seabed of the abyss, the temperature is low and there is no sunlight, so plants cannot survive at all. What role can this decomposition enzyme play then? As it turns out, although there are no plants on the seabed, materials like wood occasionally fall from the ocean surface. Being able to decompose these things is truly vital for animals trying to survive in such a harsh environment. In short, the deep sea holds endless mysteries. Humans know very little about the deep sea. What we know so far is just the tip of the iceberg, and research into deep sea ecology has not yet truly gotten on the right track. Although these creatures seem far away from us, it doesn't mean that human activities won't affect them. While many animals have evolved oversized bodies, they are actually very fragile. Because many creatures live on the edge, they are heavily dependent on oxygen, temperature, and so on. Even small environmental changes could threaten them. As colder oceans warm, the balance of temperature and oxygen in the ocean is likely to be disrupted. The giants that rely heavily on this balance might suddenly disappear one day. So growing larger and larger is not necessarily a good thing.